Hello and welcome, everyone. This is another Thursday with a discussion on nature mysticism. And Melissa is off in Sedona at the gem show, so she's not here today. And what I have for you is a little video that Zane made us uh, probably a month or two ago that he had in the hopper for us. If in the event that we weren't going to be on, we could just run this video. So I'm going to share with you that, just waiting a moment for people to touch in. And this is a virtual background. This is my new office. For those of you who didn't know, I moved to Westlake and I have a whole new space, a lot more room to spread out and all that. So take a moment, share this video. I'm going to go make sure it's public on my page. And then we will get that video started with Mr. Zane. And here we go, public. On another note, if you can't tell, I'm a bit under the weather. The clinic that was scheduled at Goddess Lee today, I moved to next week. I want to share my gift. I do not want to share my bugs. So I'm not going to be at the store today doing readings. So my apologies for those of you who had pre-registered. I automatically moved it to the same time next week. And if you can't do those times, just let me know and we will figure out a different time for you. But without further ado, this is the video for Zane. And it's all about the Katarie tradition, how it can help the world. I'm staying on for the whole thing. So if you have questions, write them in the comments and I can address them at the end and we can go over that. So here we go.
Hello, I'm Zane Curfman, known as Don Zane Curfman to my students and to my godchildren. Today, I'd just like to introduce myself and also give an example or an understanding of what I believe is so beautiful about these Andean traditions and how they have medicine that can help us solve our modern world ills. I think Hank and Melissa have done a great job describing and sharing certain understandings of the tradition. Those understandings help us to create a shared cosmovision through which we are able to access the spiritual world. So these traditions are traditions of personal power. It's all about awakening something within you, growing something within you. Personal power is everything. It dictates what you're going to be able to do in this world. It dictates how you're going to be able to touch others, how others will receive you, what you are capable of. It dictates how you are able to heal and eventually how you'll die in this reality. That's one of the things that is so beautiful about this tradition. It's a tradition that embraces reality. It embraces the earth and the reality we find ourselves in. So many spiritual traditions look down on this reality, see it as an illusion, as something we're trying to get beyond so that we can tap into the spiritual. The belief being that we're not enough, that something's broken within us. A lot of this comes from the Western story, the Western religious story, which says we were kicked out of a garden, that we did something wrong, we're kicked out of the garden, and now the earth will turn against us. That's only one sacred story from one particular region of the planet. In the Americas, and especially in South America, they had no concept of being kicked out of some mythical garden. In fact, they felt they still lived within it. And this created a whole different way that they related to reality and related to the world around them. They were in a breadbasket of abundance. They were living a very comfortable type of life, and they honored that comfort. And it shows within their sacred tradition. So the first thing is that we have a belief that you cannot spiritually develop without a relationship with Mother Earth. Without a relationship with the nature beings, you cannot truly develop yourself to your fullest potential. You just will not be able to develop that level of personal power. Another one of the concepts that I feel is so relieving about this tradition is that within that idea that we must take reality as it is, it's not an illusion we're trying to escape. It is what it is, and our work is to accept it exactly as it is, but to see it exactly as it is, not as we have been taught that it is, not how we've been indoctrinated to believe that this reality is, but to actually start to accept it on its terms. And when we start to accept reality on its terms, and we start to learn from Mother Earth and the nature beings, we start to realize that there are potentialities out there that we never were made aware of. And because we were never made aware of those things, we were never able to tap into it. So there's whole fields of information, whole fields of being that we know very little about. And especially if we are following a spiritual tradition that looks up, only looks up, and only thinks that everything will be clarified and that we just need to continuously purify ourselves to a point where we have overcome our humanity to touch our spirituality. Within a concept like that, we get the disastrous results, such as mistreating the earth, such as allowing ecosystems to die and rot, as looking at the world around us as deaf, dumb, and blind resources to be taken advantage of, to be capitalized upon, and to be seized, and in some way eked back out to the world for a profit, for a personal advancement. The traditions of the Andes see these things totally differently. And one of the understandings that we have that really can, I believe, save Western culture is an understanding of Yanantan. We have an understanding of Yanantan and Masintan. And Yanantan means the harmonious energies between opposing forces. And Masintan means the harmonious energies between similar forces. Now, of the two, Yanantan has the ability to create the most hucha, which is a word we give to heaviness. And hucha, yeah, it do all kinds of terrible, terrible things in our life. It can make us sick. It can make social relations go awry. It can cause us to get into accidents and all kinds of other things like that. But it's not evil. We don't look at it as evil. We look at it as heavy. And sometimes heavy things are good. In the mountains especially, we talk about carrying a box of apples up the mountain. Well, that box of apple, that crate of apples is very heavy. It's wearing you out. It might cause you to trip and stumble. It might cause you to break a leg. It might cause all kinds of misfortune in your life. But once you get it there, it's food. And it helps you and your family to survive. This is the same way we look at hucha. The thing is, though, is that we humans have not been taught how to deal with hucha, have not been taught how to deal with the heaviness. We've been taught to push everything uncomfortable away from us in the modern Western world. If it's uncomfortable, don't touch it. Don't mess with it, because you're not going to enjoy it. And it's all about enjoyment and pure enjoyment, and especially enjoyment in certain categories that have been indoctrinated into us to believe that those are the correct ways of enjoying life. So hucha has a secret to it. Yes, it's translated into Spanish and English as sin, and in one sense, that is part of the concept, but it's not the whole concept. Hucha is much more than that. Hucha helps us to understand something about ourselves, helps us to understand our limitations, and we have to be sober about our limitations. We don't want to go out there in fanciful thinking and fantasy and trying to do things that just can't be done. This is part of knowing the measure of your personal power, like we were talking about a little bit earlier. Personal power is important, and it's important to know the measure of your personal power. It's important to understand what you are capable of right now. That way, a fantasy doesn't run away with you and doesn't get you in more trouble, because it might be something you have the power to do, but the timing might not be right. Just having the personal power is only one part of it. The other part of it is timing, is understanding when that personal power has the best potential to create an outcome. And all of that we learn through a relationship with Mother Earth. And we begin our relationship with Mother Earth by giving her our hucha, by giving her our heaviness, those things that are causing stress in our lives, those things that are unresolved in our lives, those things that are really problems for us, that create heaviness, that drag us to the ground. There's a reason why when we're depressed, when we're anxious, all of that. The end result is we feel like we're almost zapped of energy, and we start to feel like we're being pulled to the ground. There's a reason for that, because Mother Earth is asking us to open up our heart, to open up our sadness, to open up our hucha and feed it to her. She wants our hucha because humanity was created with one idea and a couple different things that we're capable of. But one of the things that we, unlike all other creatures, can do is we can create hucha. Now, that doesn't mean that a cat can't get upset or moody, or that a dog is always happy. It doesn't mean that. And because being sad or being angry is not hucha. That's something that people in the Western culture get wrong. They think, oh, anger is hucha, sadness is hucha, anxiety is hucha. No, how you deal with it is hucha. How you are capable of working that energy in your life is hucha. How it brings you down. Hucha is a heaviness you feel. It's not the thoughts that you're thinking. It's not the emotions that you're feeling. The emotions and the thoughts help to support hucha and help to make it stronger in you and help and make it harder for you to release it. But if we can get beyond that, and we can get beyond the understanding that hucha makes us sick and it causes problems in our lives, and we can see it as a great gift it is, and understand that it is an invitation to begin a dialogue with Mother Earth herself. It's a language she understands, and she has asked us, in particular humanity, to create this energy for her and to feed her this energy. And in the feeding of this energy to her, she can actually look through our lives. That's what it takes for us to be open and honest and vulnerable and transparent. And when we are, she can then look into our lives and she drinks up that hucha, that heaviness. And it's like chocolate is how we describe it. But I want to describe it another way. It's like fertilizer, right? So all fertilizers are excrement. They're all waste products from the animals around us. They're all what is left over after leaves rot or after grass rots, and the nutrients are broken down, and there's this petrification. And in that petrified state, in a sense, it's almost a poison. It's almost something that would make us sick. But when we give it to her, what happens when we give manure to a garden? What happens when we take cut grass and throw it on a garden? The grass gives it nitrogen. The manure gives it all kinds of minerals. It's a recycling of energy. And the second that it touches the ground, it becomes a living miracle. And it becomes the food for new life, because all life on this planet uh, revolves around plant life, because the plants are the ones that know how to transform the energy of the sun into the energy that we can sustain ourselves on. Even if all you eat is animals, those animals eat another animal, or they themselves eat plants, and they get their energy from the plants. So it's just a recycling of energy. And when we can look at our hucha that way, when we can look at our personal heaviness, our personal challenges that way, and we can, instead of pushing it away, instead of suppressing it, repressing it, putting it back into the psyche somewhere where we don't have to look at it, if instead we allow it to be right there in front of us, and we allow it to do what it wants to do, we let go and we let it melt and we let it fall and we let it go down to her and we let it collect and we give it to her as a great gift. When we see it as a great gift, then she can come up into our bubble, bubble is our word, and it's similar to the word aura. Uh, it's the energy field, the living energy field around you. There's some different concepts between it and the aura because they're from different cultures, and I'll get back into that in just a moment. But when we can give that to her, when we can let that go down, and then we can open our energy field and we can invite her up to get it. We're not like using a pressure hose and sending it down to her. No, we have to invite her to come up into our bubble. And this is ultimate vulnerability. You know, this is the ultimate vulnerability, to allow the mother of creation to come up into your bubble and to know you personally. And what you give her is your shit. That's beautiful. What you give her is the stuff that you can't use, the stuff that's not making you better. And when you give that to her, she reads through it and she starts to see what is not going good in our lives. But more than see what's not going good in our lives, she also sees what's going well in our lives. She sees our hopes and dreams because every bit of living energy contains the whole of it all. It doesn't matter if it's the light, which we call Sami, or if it's the heaviness, which we call Hucha. It contains all of our energy. Our Hucha contains everything, what's good about us and what's bad about us. Our Sami does too. It's written within its quality. So when we give this to her, we engage in an ancient form of prayer. And that ancient form of prayer opens up brand new possibilities. Number one, it feeds her all this food. Number two, it tells her what's good and what's bad in our life, what we would like to have help with. We don't have to sit there and go, oh, Pachamama, Mother Earth, I need help with this and this and this. We don't have to do that. All we have to do is be vulnerable in the most vulnerable way, which is spiritually, and allow this form of spiritual energy, this heaviness, to go to her. And she gets all that information within it. And then she can take it in and she takes in those seeds of our dreams and she sees which ones have the most potential within our personal power at that moment of being fertilized and brought to flower. Yeah, we might want to own a business. She might see that, but she also sees you don't have time. More than you don't have time, you don't have the will to put that time toward that because your children and grandchildren mean more to you than that. Or because your father or your mother mean more to you to that. You have other responsibilities and you'll never have the energy to put the time and effort into making that manifest. So she's not going to feed that. She's not going to fertilize that flower because it's not going to bear fruit. Because when it gets halfway there, you're going to quit taking care of it. Because she knows you that intimately. Because you have allowed her into your spirit. And because she knows what you are capable of, what you aren't capable of, and she knows your divine purpose on this earth, why you came here. She's only going to feed the seeds that can bear fruit within the measure of personal power you have right now. Maybe 10 years from now, you'll have not just a measure of personal power, but the timing right to start a business. And that's okay. Then she would fertilize that seed. No reason to bring a seed to germination that you're going to ignore and allow to wilt in the field. That just makes that harder to ever grow that type of seed again. So that's another concept, is that we are reliant on reconnecting with nature. Nature softens us. It softens our edges. It softens our energy. It softens our ego. And through that, we start to learn to enter into the sacred dimension of her, of this middle world, of the energy of the sacred earth. Yeah, the earth is sacred. It's not an illusion we're trying to get away from. We're not trying to purify ourselves out of the situation. We are trying to accept reality as it is, and these traditions give us that tool to accept reality. But we can only do it when we start to develop an interpersonal relationship with Mother Earth and the nature beings. They're the ones that are going to soften us. They're the ones that are going to strengthen our personal power because they're going to show us how to correctly use power in this world. We're going to see it firsthand from them in a type of energetic dialogue, which is not the language of English, Spanish, Quechua, or any other language. It is a language of energy, and its syllables are Sami and Hucha, heavy and light. And through those syllables, through just this simple language, the entire wisdom of the universe can be shared with you. You can't know it, but you can experience it. And that humbles us. That brings us back to where our place on earth is. And eventually we develop the same quality that Mother Earth has, the quality to eat the hucha of others. We start to develop that ability within us slowly but surely. And that allows us to create more ease within our personal relationships, more ease within our spiritual relationships, more ease within with life itself, more ease with reality. And when we start to create more ease, people feel that, and our personal power grows, because our personal power actually grows from the relationships in our lives, both physical and non-physical, seen and unseen worlds. How we react to those relationships creates the amount of personal power we have to give. Another way of saying that is, the more you learn to be in relationship with nature and Mother Earth, the more personal power you have. And that personal power strengthens your ability to have harmonious relationships with other types of people, other types of plants, other types of animals, because we are learning from the blueprint level. We are learning the original instructions of living a life on Earth. And that is beautiful. Now, a concept I brought up just a little bit ago was the Yanantan and Masintan. And I just want to explain why those are so important at this time in modern history. So, the Western culture, which has dominated the majority of the world, from Asia all the way into South America and Africa, all of the continents of the world have the seed of the Western culture planted within it. And the Western culture believes in capitalizing upon things. It also has this idea, this really lofty and beautiful ideal of we were all created equal. This is especially true in the United States. We were all created equal. We're all equal. Now this has led, and if we're all equal, we are that understanding of energy that we call Masintan. And that is the harmonious relationships between equality, or the harmonious relationships between the similar. So if I go out and I meet another man, there are some similar grounds that that man and I can relate to each other. If I meet another woman, we have some similarities, but there's also this difference between us. And that difference makes it possible for there to be hucha develop, for heaviness to develop within the relationship, and for things to go awry. This is true even with two men that have two different job positions. Okay, so if your manager and yourself, even though you're both men, you're both humans, and you're both equal in those ways, you're both Masintan, there's a Yanantan dynamic, a power dynamic where they are above you and they have a different type of responsibility than you. So they treat you different and you treat them different. And that creates a lot of times hucha, right? It creates heavy feelings within you. And those heavy feelings look for an outlet. They look for a way to be expressed. And they're expressed through thoughts and emotions. And when they're expressed, we use it almost as a weapon against the thought and the emotion that we're feeling. Instead of learning to experience the thought and emotion and put it where it belongs and flow things. And that doesn't mean that there's never a reason to get upset. That doesn't mean that within your life, you'll never be sad. You'll never be angry. You'll never be anxious. Get rid of that idea altogether. Those happen constantly. That's part of accepting reality on its terms, not yours. You will be angry sometimes. You will be anxious sometimes. You will be sad sometimes. You will desire things sometimes. But we are capable of sitting in the center of that. We are capable of making wise decisions within it. There are situations where anger is the correct response, and that's part of of accepting reality on its terms. But we get to realize when it's an authentic response and when it's a triggered response. And the difference is, a triggered response is something that's been built up within you. It's something, it has a concept to it. When we allow our emotions to become just raw feelings, they'll cycle through us very quickly when we don't lend any importance to them. They cycle through us very quickly. The problem is when we develop a story around it, we don't allow it to go. You know, how many people have been cut off in traffic and were angry or scared 30 minutes later? It's a normal thing to do, and it's natural. How many have been scared an hour later? That's a little strange. but it's still pretty natural. But if you're scared or still angry 2 hours later, 3 hours later, and it's starting to infect your entire day, you have just been triggered. Some wound in you has been triggered. That anger is not coming from the occurrence that just happened. That anger is coming from a buildup of a story that says maybe these things just happened to you and you have no power over it and all these other things like that. That's a buildup of a story. Okay. But I'm on a ramble here. I want to kind of pull it back together here. Why I think Yonantan is so important, because Misintan, the other one, is what the United States and many of the Western cultures is kind of built on. That everyone, that we dominate everything to a point where everyone is equal. Equal. What is that equality? Beat down. Beat down till they accept whatever is given to them. Okay. That is what we call the way of the conquering lion. And the Western culture really exemplifies the way of the conquering lion. But there's another way. There's a communal way. And the communal way looks at Yanantan. So in our culture right now, very Misintan, we tend not to want to look at the ugly fact that we're not all equal, that justice is not the same for everyone, that we all don't have liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is harder for some to pursue than others. These are hard truths that we don't like to accept. We like to think, oh no, education, we've made it available to everyone. No, we've made it available to everyone who has enough to pay for it. We may, or has the right family, or has the highest grades. You know, we've made it very unfair. And we don't look at that unfairness because it hurts us. It hurts our cultural ideal, our cultural idea of freedom, equality, justice, because because we want to believe we live in a Misintan universe, a universe of similarities. But we don't. We live in a Yanantan universe. People born in the inner city have a harder time. People who are minorities have a harder time. Women have a harder time in this reality as it is right now. And if we don't accept that as truth, we won't put forth the energy necessary to change it. That is where Yanantan comes in, is to see that things are not the same everywhere. And we actually say Yanantan is the concept of celebrating of differences. Okay, another way this works is right now we believe we are at a time of the regathering, when the tribes of man are coming back together, and they're coming back together to share their information, to share their knowledge, spiritual, scientific, culinary, all the information. We have this storehouse of information that the tribes of man have gone out and collected, that were shaped by the lands they lived in, by the lands your ancestors lived in, shaped the way you are, and shaped the information you have to give. And we're now at the time of the regathering. And I just want to focus on spirituality for a moment to help express this Yanantan principle. Right now, with everything coming back together, there's a great potential for hucha, especially based around sacred traditions or cultural understandings, cultural ways of understanding the world around us. We can create a lot of communal huchas right now, because this tradition says something such as there's sin in the world, and the payment for sin is death in a lake of fire or whatever. And this other tradition has no concept of that whatsoever, and thinks that everything in the world is beautiful and everything in the world is useful. And it's just about learning how to accept it on its terms and how to be in harmony with it. Now, these two have a different idealism. Another way of saying it is perhaps like the great monotheistic religions of the world. Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, which is a unique form of monotheism and monotheistic thought. But they all have pretty similar concepts in a lot of ways. And in that way, they're Misintan, but they have some different concepts too. Now, in our cultural viewpoint, what we would do is throw away those nasty bits that make us uncomfortable. Oh, those little nasty bits such as, oh, you can't have a graven image. Oh, but my religion, we have the cross, or we have Jesus on the cross. You know, uh, and just in that little bit of a difference creates all of the friction needed to start wars, to start destruction in the world, because the belief is that only one can be right. And that's Misinton. That's that idea of Misinton, that everything's equal on some level. We have to break it all back down to its equality. And what that leads to is this cherry picking. It leads to cultural appropriation, the cherry picking of traditions to help express what you already believe within yourself, to help express what you already think. And that thing might not be spiritual. It might be that everyone has the same potential if they just pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Well, I'm here to tell you some people don't have boots and some people don't have shoes at all. So if you don't have a pair of boots, you don't have a pair of shoes, you have a harder time pulling yourself up by your bootstraps than someone who has 20 pair and can choose the right pair for the occasion. Do you get what I'm saying with this? Do you understand how that is the root of the problems in Western culture? Is that we refuse to look at those nasty little bits that make us different. Where in the Peruvian cultures, they do look at those things. They do look at those. They even exemplify them in a sense, in a stereotypical sense even, but they do it in a way where they are still celebrating each other. Though they might find one idea or concept weird, they accept it's right for you. They don't sit there and say, oh, but my concept, my idea is the correct idea, and they just have to get on board with this. No, they sit there and they say, that's right for them. How is that right for them? How can I be in a place where I can accept that that's right for them, and more than accept it, celebrate it. Celebrate that things are harder for that culture or harder for that group within our society. If we can celebrate that things are harder for them and we can celebrate the uniqueness that created in their cultural environment, that unique, which this is what creates cultures. This is what creates customs, is the unique limitations and the abundances that are within a certain environment. That creates a type of culture. Even a counterculture is created that way. So as we see that, and we could celebrate that the poor have a harder time, that they have a harder time surviving. Number one, we're going to suddenly realize that we might have to do more personally use our personal power to help change the situation. Maybe we can't change it on a global level, but maybe we can change it on a communal level with the members within your community. And that is what this teaches us, this idea of Yanantan. Now, the highest state of Yanantan we see as a man and woman coming together. Why do we see it that way? Well, because there's a lot of cultural differences in every culture between the sexes. Men do one thing, women do another thing. Part of this is biology, and part of this is indoctrination and cultural understandings. But as different as those roles can be, as different and as uncomfortable as those interactions can be, when they come together, there is no doubt that a living miracle can be born, physically born, a baby, and the continuance of the species. The immortality of the species is based on the coming together of Yanantan energy to create something greater. And that will never be created if we relate things away. That's a Misinton technique. Relating things away. That's how cultural appropriation happens. That's how all of these horrible things happen, is that we take what we like that upholds our worldview and we throw out everything that doesn't. That's a Misinton way of being. And we believe that that smooths the board over, that makes everything smooth. But that in and of itself is an illusion. It's not smoothed over, and it takes intimidating force to keep everything on that level. And what we need now is to step away from toxic masculinity and intimidating force. We need Mother Earth to show us the way. We need her to show us the grand plan, because it's her grand plan. We need the nature beings to show us how to be with them, not how they must be with us, but how we must be with them. We need them to soften us. We need them to show us a new way. And if we can do this, and then we can start to learn to celebrate each other's differences, every person's and cultures and economic strata's unique differences, unique struggles and eases in life, and we can start to celebrate that, then we can start to unlock the technology. We can start to unlock the spirituality. We can start to unlock the beauty and the gold that humanity has. But it only comes through that celebration of the differences. It only comes through accepting what's uncomfortable. It only comes from finding the way to accept reality on its terms. And this is the spiritual tradition of the Andes. This is what they are mostly concerned with. And before I sign off of this video here, I wanted to talk about one other concept. And that's the concept of prosperity spirituality. And it kind of was born out of the concept of prosperity Christianity, and it's kind of spread out. Okay, so in the Andes, we have something that we understand as Aini. And Aini is really understanding your personal power and how it interplays with the world at large, how to stay within harmony with the world around you. And if you stay within harmony, for the most part, you're going to have a bit of ease in your life, and you're going to have enough to survive. Now, this goes right in the face of modern day spirituality. Almost all modern day spirituality is using marketing to get at you. And what do they use? Pain points. And what's one of the big pain points? The exterior pain points. Because the interior pain points we don't pay as much attention to, because we don't have a respect for the earth, and that makes us not have a respect for our inner world as well. But that exterior, and what does our culture say is the greatest exterior status symbol? Wealth. Material wealth. And so we start to equate spiritual progression with material wealth. Oh, if you're on your right path, money will just pour in. If you're on the right path, if you're doing what God wants you to do, everything will be smooth, everything will be perfect, everything will be just as it's supposed to be. All you have to do is get on the right path, and everything is you're going to suddenly ascend the ladder of economic strata. And you're going to find yourself at the top of it with all the power and all the glory and all the money. The indigenous people of the world show us a whole different way. They show us a way of living in harmony with the earth. And that is true wealth, is living in harmony and community and harmony with the earth. And that type of wealth, that type of abundance has nothing to do with token economy. It has nothing to do with having more than your neighbor or more than someone else or living the best material life you possibly can. It has to do with living a good life. It has to do with surviving another year. I've worked with a lot of indigenous people and a lot of spiritual masters from different traditions and different cultures. And one thing that is pretty much the same across the board, except for in the westernized world, especially the United States and some countries in Europe, is that they're usually the poorest. Yeah, they're usually the poorest. They use their harmony and their spirituality as a way to accept their place in life, and as a way of creating enough abundance in their life to survive. But in Western standards, they are impoverished. They live in stone huts without central heating, without any type of insulation. They live in these type of conditions. And if you've traveled the world and you've worked with spiritual teachers around the world, I think you're going to have seen this, that sometimes some spiritual teachers get exalted enough to have a certain level of material wealth. But that's not what the teachings are about. They were never about spiritual wealth, they were never about physical wealth. They were about spiritual wealth. which is a resource within the self to survive, a resiliency within the self to deal with the situations that are presented, and an understanding within the self and an empowerment within the self to make the most of advantages and opportunities when they come. This is the spiritual arts. Thanks.
All right. There we had Zane with the video all about the Katarie tradition and a little bit of what it can do for you. And this is the first time I watched the video myself, so I was watching it right along with you. And opening it up, if you have any questions, I'm not Zane, but I'll do my best to answer them. And one thing I want to share when he talks about abundance, I follow this channeler called Bashar, and they say abundance has nothing to do with money or wealth. They define it as the ability to do what you want to do when you need to do it, or what you need to do when you need to do it. And things just, when you're lined up like that and congruent, thought, word, and deed, body, mind, and spirit, things just kind of unfold. And that comes into being an Aini and having your energy moving through you and to the environment in a way that is helpful. But let's see, we had, and I put this up on the screen. Someone was asking, is it kucha or kucha? It's actually hucha with an H. And it's hard because Quechua is not a written language. So like any spellings, they would tell us in class, like spell it however you want to spell it. So you say it this way. And even saying it, there's all kinds of different ways to say them. And Judy had said that, thank you for clarifying about hucha. This makes a lot of sense. And then just a couple of people with comments through the video with just little signs. Then towards the end, hello, abundance, spiritual abundance. But let me know any questions. And all of this was to let you know too that Zane, I forget, I put the link in the comments. He has like a 2-week intro class, and we had him on last week, and he was very specific in letting people know that this is not something where it's like breadcrumbing and then you need more or whatever. The course is designed to stand on its own. So if this calls to you, and if it's the only thing you ever take from Zane, that 2-hour, not 2-hour, it's a 2-week class for $47. The link's in the comments. And then if you want to just dive in, if you are like me, you like for my first time that I've had with Zane, for my first chanting of Pachamama when we were opening in ceremony, I knew this tradition was for me. And if that is the case, in the video description, there is a link to the Goddess Elite website with the information for the 7-weekend program. And if you feel called to it and none of the payment options seem right, but you know you're supposed to be in it, reach out to me and we will see what we can work out for you. Let's see. And Sylvie was offering, what's this little box here? I've always thought abundance is more of a state of mind and how you are present or in the present. Yeah, like at one minute or being in the ever present moment and now is huge because we fragment ourselves. Like if you had something happen to you, like there might be people that they have this one impact event and all of a sudden, like they're stuck in the past to this one thing and they keep going back to it, keep going back to it. That's fragmenting them out of the moment into the past. And that takes up so much RAM. If you think about it, like a human being, kind of like a computer, you only have so much RAM. If you have 64 megabytes of RAM and 30 are running all these past programs, and you want to start a business and do something new and go in a new direction in your life, but it takes 50 RAM to do it, you'll never be able to do it. You just don't have the bandwidth, literally, in order to run all this past programming and do these new things. So when you start to unfragment yourself and you deal with this hucha and you offer what's not working for you to the earth, like Sam was saying in the video, now all of a sudden you've freed up all that 20 of that 30 RAM that was running these past programs. You have freed up all this extra capacity. And now what seeds would you be able to water? What seeds would you be able to germinate and bring to fruition? That's the benefit of unfragmenting yourself. And the same happens in the future. Like you could be thinking about all these things you want to do. Like I'm a Pisces, I'm guilty of it. I dream, 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 dream. It's like, well, if you, what's the Indian mystic? I don't know if it was Osho or another one. They talk about the Western people. Like we will sit there and we'll be like flowers, right? And you just think, I want flowers, 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 flowers. You keep thinking flowers. You're in the future about these flowers you want to grow, these flowers you want to bloom, but you forget to be in the moment for the process. So if you see this vision and this dream, what do you need to do now? I need to till the soil. I need to remove the boulders. I need to fertilize. I need to water. I need to make sure I put it in a place where it gets the right amount of sun. I have to do something for the, plants in a certain way so that the bugs don't get them. All these things. So, like when you're not fragmented in the past, running past programs that don't really matter to the moment, and you're not fragmented, like the dream of the future is enough to give you the inertia to start choosing and start living. Then you let it go. But if you stay there, like you're not going to do the work. So there we go. There's a Hank tangent for you. And she is saying here, Zane is extremely wise, starting to read his book. You love him. Yeah, I even got private messages to my Facebook, like just saying Zane is great. They didn't want to comment. Just Zane's great. That's all. I agree. I'm a Zane addict, and I'm not ashamed. We have to start a Zane Anonymous so we can all go to meetings and talk about them and whatnot. No. But any questions about the video or the program or anything at all? We've got a couple minutes. And I should take this banner down because I'm not Zane. Haha. And for those of you who missed it at the beginning, this is like a virtual background, but this is my new office. If you want to come check me out in Westlake, there's my deal there. And my clinic today, if you can't tell, if you can't tell, excuse me, I'm a bit under the weather, so I have moved the clinic today till next week. I want to share my gift. I don't want to share my germs, so I will not be at the store today. Unless you want a virtual appointment, you can ping me. I can do probably virtual stuff from my house, but I don't want to get anybody contaminated with my germs or whatnot. So, final call for questions, comments. Thank you all. Like I saw the numbers, people hung out for pretty much the whole video. I really thank you for hanging out and spending the time with me. One thing I will speak to, an example of relating things away. When the Spanish first came to Peru and they saw these little guys, chumpy stones, they started as 5 stones. We have these 5 little stones here. And when they started diving into it and figuring out what these stones are for, the Spanish, look, it's disappearing on me because of the virtual background. They're like, well, there's these for these energy centers and this and that. And as soon as they had a little bit of information, they related it away and said, oh, that's like our chakras. Because in this tradition, we have Nawis, which is like, Nawi literally means eye. So it's like an eye of energy. And it's like from your Cusco, from your navel is where you bring energy in and out of, connects you to everything out there. But they immediately went to, oh, that's just like chakras. And so instead of 5 stones, now you find 6, 7, and so on. And instead of now instead of being these eyes that bring in and bring energy in and out, now it's these spinning discs instead. And they related away, so they stopped receiving in a way. And the carol would be very I don't know if they really get animated. I'm going to use the word animated. Like if you were talking about apus, which are mountain spirits, and you were a Spanish guy, and you were like, "Oh, that's just like our archangels," they'd be like, "No, your angel's an angel. Our mountain spirit's a mountain spirit. They're different. They may have a similar function, but you want to look at the differences because in the differences is the gold. That is the big takeaway. Look at the differences. Don't relate to people where you're similar. Look at where the contrast is." And how you can look at that contrast and discover something new about yourself and your environment. Oh, yes, the sound bowls are cool. I do have some sound bowls with me. Yeah. I got a couple. I'm not actually in my office, but I got a few in the room I'm in. Nice way to, good note to end on is with the sound bowl. You can't really see it because it's disappearing, but I got the cool little window decals on there with Metatron's cube and Flower of Life. It's cool. But I will start streaming from my office a bit more often, especially for TikTok. So if you don't follow me on TikTok and you want to see some like sound bath type of stuff, check that out. Yeah, she's saying sound chakra bowls. Absolutely. There's different notes for the chakras as well, depending what system you go with, or planetary frequencies. So you could do C for the root, or you could do like Earth 136.1. That's actually for the heart. And then one below that would be Earth Day. Anyway, don't start getting me talking about sound stuff because I will go off in major tangents like Zane. When you say streaming, I don't stream on Twitch right now. Usually Melissa is on with me, so like if you think I hijacked her station, no, I'm just on because she is out at Tucson, the gem show, buying all kinds of cool stuff to bring back to Goddess Elite for sale. So I do not typically stream on Twitch. I do have a Twitch channel, but my main streaming platforms are TikTok And then I do have my YouTube channel, which is the Sonic Shaman. I stream to my Facebook profile, which is just my name, Hank Sutala, and you can find me there. Also on Instagram, StreamYard just started to support streaming to Instagram, so I will be taking advantage of that. I just haven't done it yet. So I will be back doing like little streams on Facebook, but my biggest audience is on TikTok. So when I do like live streams, I typically focus on there, and I can't do TikTok and something else because they just don't play well with some technology stuff yet. So unfortunately, until they do, I can only stream to TikTok or everything else, and TikTok is my main jam. So I'm also the Sonic Shaman there. On Instagram, I'm the Sonic Shaman 528. So, but if you Google Sonic Shaman, I think me may come up, so you can find me. Or if you go to my Facebook profile, it has links to all the other places. All right, I think I am done. Thank you so much again for hanging out, and we will catch you next Thursday for another Nature Mystic discussion. And I believe Melissa should be back by next Thursday. If not, I will come up with something else, or you'll just have to put up with me for an hour-ish of time. Love you all. Nike Kawaiki. Thank you. I love you. Wilka Nuna Penny Chai Waku Chai Kuna, Sacred Soul brothers and sisters. Hopefully we'll see you in the program that starts in April. Take care.